So hello and welcome to Fintech Today, where we get to meet the people behind this fintech revolution. I'm your host, Matt Hyde from Recruit One to One, a specialist in finding the best talent in the finance and tech sector in the UK. Now today, it's great to be able to welcome Stephen Fine, who is the Chief Exec of investment bank Peel Hunt, and who was also one of the sponsors at this year's recent Fintech Awards London. So welcome, Stephen. It's great to have you with us today.
Thanks very much. It's great to be here.
Wonderful. I suppose we've got to go straight into it because a big announcement yesterday in the UK, in the fintech community, that involved Peel Hunt, and that was the Fintech Growth Fund. Maybe you could just give us a bit more explanation about what that fund is, how Peel Hunts are involved, and what you're expecting from it.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're absolutely delighted to be involved in this really important initiative. And I think one of the key things to first of all say, a government-sponsored review, which was Rishi Sunak as Chancellor, asked Sir Ron Khalifa to do a review and look at the funding gap that existed in the UK fintech space. And he identified a £2 billion gap and recommended a formation of a Fintech Growth Fund to allow early stage companies the opportunity to receive the funding they so desire to help them achieve their ambitions and grow here in the UK. And you know what? A government review, an end result, and then a fund that's at the end of it, it does show that that process works. So we are delighted. In fact, we're honoured and proud to be associated with this wonderful initiative and hope it will only go from strength to strength.
Excellent. And there's some really great people involved in this initiative, isn't it? Just maybe give us some of the people that you're going to be working with on this project.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, we're delighted to have had the backing of Barclays, MasterCard, NatWest, Nomura, etc., and the London Stock Exchange, which I think is terrific. Probably just as importantly is when you look at the actual advisors or those involved with the fund itself. And the advisory board is chaired by Lord Philip Hammond. You've got Claire Boosfield from M&G. You've got Sir Charles Bowman, who's a senior partner of PwC. You've got Lord Jerry Grimstone, Minister of Investment. You've got Dame Helena Morrissey, Phil Smith. You know, the list is terrific, and it's a fantastic advisory board that will be helping the team. But of course, I can't go into anything more than the fact that the four key principals that will be running this, Angelisa, Joe Parkin, Kashulia Somasundaram, and Phil Vidler, a terrific group of individuals that have got strong backgrounds coming together as a great team to help take this initiative forward.
Yeah, definitely. A new fantastic four, maybe we could say there, and leading this. And it's so important. You know, why do you feel that it was so important for this fund to be set up and for Peel Hunt to really, be really very much part of it?
Well, look, Khalifa identified the funding gap. And when there is a gap, you've got to find the funds to fill it. And one of the problems I think we've always had in this country is there's a tremendous creativity, a tremendous spirit of entrepreneurship and innovation. But we get to a stage where some of these great companies can't find the funding they need to take them to the next level. What does that mean? They get bought by another company, they go to another jurisdiction, the Mecca of the US or whatever it might be seen as. So it's vital and critical that we do our best to ensure that these companies stay here. The IP was generated here, the creativity was generated here, the innovation was innovated here, generated here, let's make sure they stay here. So that gap was an important identification point, and finding a way to fill it, I think we found the perfect solution.
Yeah, it's great to see that Khalifa report really coming to life. We think of, with CFIT, with Charlotte and with Ez, we see now this fund. We're starting to see the jigsaw, in a sense, starting to come together, which is really going to really help drive and continue the drive that we've had with fintech within the UK. Now, obviously, you're the chief exec of Peel Hunt. Many may recognise the name, but just give us a little bit of background actually about, what does Peel Hunt do?
So Peel Hunt are involved in all aspects of the capital market cycle. We're largely public market focused, but also we're private market focused as well. So public-private agnostics, almost ownership agnostic. But we sit in between companies and their shareholders, and we help both achieve their ambitions. Shareholders are looking to make investments in interesting companies that can help them generate performance, or what's known as alpha. Companies are looking for long-term supportive shareholders to help them achieve their ambitions. Sit in the middle. Core competence being research, deep knowledge, deep understanding, strong intellectual property in the 17 sectors that we operate in. We are acting for as a retained advisor by 158 UK quoted public companies. In aggregate, that's about £110 billion worth of market cap that we are retained as an advisor to. We help them in all aspects of life as a public company: capital raise, shareholder analysis, shareholder interactions, regulatory issues, fundraising. IPOs we do, secondary fundraisings I mentioned, we do debt advisory, we do M&A, all aspects of the capital market cycle we look at, all around that core credibility of research where we cover over 400 public companies in the UK and deep expertise in private companies around those various ecosystems as well.
So an incredibly busy time, and you keep growing as we keep seeing year on year. It's safe to say that after we came out of COVID, that the last year was a turbulent one in many ways. How would you say that you found the market in particular within London over the last 12 months? And what are you expecting to see maybe in the next 12 months?
It's pretty clear to say we started to see a switch from growth to value at the back end of 2021. You can argue there was a large amount of exuberance, and there was a large amount of hope put in valuations of companies that were receiving funding. But the consequence of inflationary concerns, cost of living, and then obviously the change in interest rates and the cost of capital have had a pretty seismic impact on capital markets activity. The era of free money is pretty much gone. Financial sponsors auctioning portfolio companies to each other, that's kind of taken its toll. It's going to make life quite difficult. When the cost of capital has changed, it has a big impact on what you might call price discovery. What is the genuine value of a company? Was it the last funding round, or is it what someone's prepared to pay? So that dislocation, particularly in the private world, where you've got absolute certainty in the public markets because there's a share price and a market cap, is just having some quite significant impact. That's caused a bit of a logjam in the world of financial markets and the capital market cycle as companies try and right-size themselves, deal with rising interest rates, which impacts debt levels. Backers that have put debt into companies to fund their next stages of their growth are now seeing any cash coming out, just financing debt, not allowing growth to happen. So there's a bit of a logjam, what you might call some constipation, which is not a great word, but some constipation in the industry. Cycles I'm a great believer in, and I do believe we are nearer the end of this cycle than the beginning. And there are definitely some signs that this logjam is starting to free up and that the wheels of capitalism are starting to roll again in a slight fashion. It's another reason why I'm delighted that this Fintech Growth Fund has been launched, because finding capital, growth capital as a service, GCAS, as I think we like to call it, is a vital part of the next stage of companies' growth. They can't all be on 400 times revenue. They don't need to be on 4 times EBITDA. There's probably a happy medium in between somewhere that makes sense, where all stakeholders are happy.
So you're saying really, we've had a difficult time, and the next 12 months is time to start looking, and it's getting better again. There's going to be some good movement, so to speak.
I wouldn't say we're approaching nirvana and a fantastic party time, but I think as we get to the end of 23 and certainly into 24, you'll start to see things loosening up a little bit as the cycle turns and companies embark again on the hunt for growth.
Yeah. So you definitely seen a sentiment change in it. I think sometimes, being British, we can sometimes talk ourselves into a bit of a recession or into difficulties. Are you starting to see that sentiment and attitudes is starting to change?
Matt, I think that's a really good point. I mean, one of the biggest issues I think that exists, particularly in the UK, is this sort of miasma or this cloud that seems to be hanging over us. And we're a country that are very, very good at moaning, weather, traffic, whatever it might be. We're good at it. It's too hot, it's too cold, it's too wet, it's too dry. We like to talk about these things. The culture of celebrating growth and celebrating achievement contrasts very differently in the US to over here. And I think it's something that we need to take a good hard look at ourselves and definitely celebrate some of the things we're good at, because there is an awful lot going on that we should be very proud of, and we should be much more proud of.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's an old saying, isn't it, about bad news sells, and we don't want bad news. We want that positivity. And I think over the last 5 or 6 years, some tremendous experience and stories coming out of the UK, and we've got to shout about it, haven't we, and be proud about it. I think, and that kind of takes me into maybe the next sort of question. You're very much involved in Fintech Awards London, and that's all about highlighting, recognizing, rewarding talented people, talented companies. What was your reasoning for getting involved in the awards?
Exactly that. Celebrate success, celebrate innovation, celebrate achievement, celebrate growth, celebrate opportunity. I think all of these things are important. It's not just a badge of honor, I've won an award. You actually got to have done something. I think you apply a lot of rigor in the judging process as to, first of all, who gets nominated, and then finally the selection of the winners. And that rigor is a really, really important signal to the outside world. There's some very high quality opportunities here, and some very high quality companies that want to disrupt or want to change or want to just help. And I think it's not all about disruption, it's about helping. And I think that's another key thing as well.
You mentioned the judging process being quite rigorous. I mean, how did Peel Hunt, those who were involved in the judging, how did they find that process? Because it's very much about seeing the whites of people's eyes, isn't it? You know, sitting down in front of people, very different to many others.
Full respect to a rigorous judging process, because, you know, nominating my mate because he or she has done a good job and a first past the post, you know, it kind of doesn't work well. And I think one of the things you guys can look at is the quality of those that have won the awards and what they've gone on to do and be a part of. And therefore you get an alumni of achievement and success that I think everybody is proud of. And that's just a function of a very strong, you know, and rigorous judging process.
Yeah, thanks. I think, and we would agree. I mean, that's the whole point about it for us. So thinking about Peel Hunt, what are you doing to help, I suppose, the fintechs of tomorrow? We've talked a little bit, I suppose, about getting involved in the awards, but what is your kind of ambition now to help those fintech companies going forward?
Well, we identified fintech. I mean, it's bizarre because fintech as a term has been around for quite some time. And you can argue, is it outdated? But it most definitely isn't. If you put fintech into Google, you'll get a gazillion responses. It's very here and now and apt and topical, and actually more timely as time goes on. And finance and technology is just an enormous, you know how many fintech companies there are in the UK. So we identified that as a key area that we wanted to focus on, and bringing in specific research capability in the subsector of fintech itself was an important starting point. And Gotham, who's our fintech analyst, joined us from Goldman. He'd been there over 12 years. He wrote a 165-page initiation note. It was probably one of the most downloaded pieces of research that we've actually ever written as a firm, other than our top 10s that you do in January, you know, sort of thing. So tremendous take up from the investor base in looking and understanding the world of fintech. That's led to us getting closer to and being retained as an advisor by the likes of Equals and WAG Payments. We were on the IPO of Cab Payments, Alpha Group, you know, Augmentum Fintech. These are companies we're retained by in the public markets, and also spreading those tentacles out into the private world and seeing who are the next potential public market contenders. So strong research, great advisory, world-class distribution, market share, trading, execution, research, advisory, and all these. That's what we're all about. And if I take fintech as an example, it's an area we've devoted a lot of resource because we see so much opportunity.
Fantastic. So I suppose the question now is, what's the biggest sort of challenge that you're finding maybe within your role, leading the business, or maybe within the business itself?
I can see a lot of change happening. Sometimes it takes a downturn to really shake things up, because, you know, standing on a greasy log and falling off is pretty easy. And it's not like falling off a log. It's hard work to get things done. And I definitely think a downturn separates those that have got great business models and great ideas and innovation and creativity from those that are just chancing their arm. And I think the Fintech Awards does a great job at highlighting those that have done well. It's our job to highlight those even earlier and bring them on to the next stage. So I think for us, you know, there is this cloud hanging over capital markets right now. There's this cloud hanging over the UK right now. Everything's bad, and people are on strike, and it's cost of living and mortgage rates and low capital markets activity and political uncertainty and general election possibility. All of that stuff is just every day you pick up the paper and it's all bad news. And it isn't. I mean, you know, people are having a tough time, and I absolutely completely sympathize. When you're going through a cost of living crisis, it is difficult, but there is a huge amount of investment still going on in this country. Huge amount of opportunity still in this country. It's still a hotbed of creativity. It's a hotbed of innovation and ambition. And that's what we've got to fuel, and that's what we've got to channel our energies into supporting.
Definitely. Well, I'm loving the energy and I'm loving the positivity. And I think that's what is so needed in these days. So I suppose maybe just to finish them, I always like to ask, what was maybe the best bit of advice that you've been given, or maybe what also is the best bit of advice you would like to give to those out there?
Well, I probably would say something like work hard, play hard, which is what I try to tell my kids. I think they majored on the latter than the former, but no, not really. But look, I think being a good listener is really important. You know, listen to people, understand people. Everyone's got their issues, anxieties, their foibles, idiosyncrasies, and understand. If you understand people, you can do a good job, and you can help them and guide them and help find solutions that work best for them.
Fantastic. Well, look, Stephen, it's been wonderful talking to you today. It's great to be able to watch how PLN's continue to grow, but equally this new Fintech Growth Fund, exciting times for the UK and for fintechs there. So thank you very much, and take care.
Great. Thanks very much, Matt. Much appreciated.